Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Red Dot Forum Camera Talk. As always, I am David Farkas. I'm joined by Josh Lair.
Evening, everybody.
Over there in the little box, we've got Jose Rivera.
Hello, hello.
And we are back for an 8th time.
That's crazy.
With another Ask Us Anything. These
Yes.
have been a popular staple on the channel. We do them about every 10 episodes or so, which means we've actually been doing this for 90 episodes?
Well, 80.
80 something episodes or whatever?
Yeah, a lot.
A lot. So if you're just joining us for the first time, we are Leica nerds, we are camera nerds, and we talk about all this stuff. So
I think we should also note that this month is our 5 years of doing the show.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, we started the show March 2020,
Wow.
which is wild.
That is wild.
Yes.
Wow.
So, yes, I think
But we look so much younger now.
I know, well, when I shave, yeah, but not today. I think that one of the most important sort of qualifiers of this show, of these kinds of shows, is we may call it Ask Us Anything. We don't call it We Answer Anything. So keep that in mind. There are certain topics, if you're a regular viewer of this show, you know that we just don't cover, which are things like what Leica may be coming out with next, or future firmware or software updates, or things that are rumors or speculative. We don't comment on that. We did do our wish list episode in December of 2023, where we broke most of those rules and just went rampant speculating about what we would do if we were in charge.
Josh also spilled a beer on the table.
I did spill a beer. So if you want to watch that and see me spill a beer, we should timestamp that. Like Josh,
we really should just timestamp that right there.
So the point of this is to kind of have a grab bag of questions, and I think something we should mention is if you want to be sure your question gets answered, you want to submit it ahead of time. We got a ton of questions over the last few days, and we are going to put those first because it's only fair.
Absolutely.
But keep throwing your questions in the chat, and Jose will do his best to monitor them. We'll probably get about 1 billion. But we should just get started.
We should just jump right in. So, I should just a little bit of housekeeping before we get on a roll, because we're going to just get on a roll here.
That's right. We got a lot of questions.
First, Josh talks really fast.
Too fast for you.
Okay. YouTube has a fantastic little feature that allows you to play back at like 3/4 speed. Highly suggest that.
Just make sure you go back to 2x speed when David's talking.
That's right.
We'll be fine.
I talk a little slow, he talks a little fast, and in the middle.
A lot of things I got to say in a very short amount of time.
All right. We also just want to say, if you are new here and you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Click that subscribe button and make sure you click the notification bell so you know that we post new content like this. Also, if you aren't, lucky enough to see us live, don't worry. We archive all of our previous episodes in separate playlists on our YouTube channel. You can rewatch any of them at any time for all the information in glorious 4K. So they are also available as a podcast if you want to just listen to us drone on while you're doing your morning commute.
And whenever we do these shows, it reminds me of that, because we get a lot of questions that we've covered before.
We have.
Now, we're happy to answer them. It's no problem. But there's a lot of topics we've really covered in depth. So you may ask us a question that we've covered, and we'll give you a brief answer because we have a lot of questions.
Sure.
But if you want to get a deeper dive on it, just search our channel for that relevant topic, and you'll be able to get 2 hours of glorious David and Josh rambling about it.
Amazing.
So
Amazing.
we're here. Right. Jose, why don't you get us started with the question?
All right. Sounds good. Let's see.
Tell us who it's for, because I think David kind of color-coded them.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay. First one is for Josh.
Okay.
Can you discuss how to use a breakthrough X4 neutral density filter with a Noctilux 50, 0.95, and or 75 Noctilux on a bright day?
Sure. So the purpose of a neutral density filter on a fast aperture lens is to reduce the amount of light coming in so that you can shoot the lens at maximum aperture while still maintaining a shutter speed that is not faster than the camera is capable of putting out. Because you can imagine if you're shooting in bright, bright daylight on the beach, maybe a bridal shoot with a white dress, etc., and you're shooting a Noctilux and it's 0.95, and you'll put it at ISO 100, and if you're using anything prior to the M11, you're going to hit the 4,000th of a second shutter speed limit, and you're probably still going to have an overexposed image. So the neutral density filter reduces the amount of light coming into the lens, and therefore allows you to shoot wide open in those environments.
Now, I should have the add-on question.
Yes.
You mentioned M11.
Yes.
Now, why is it different with the M11.
So a feature that we got in the M11, which is something we've had in the SLs since the SL601, is an electronic shutter, which goes significantly faster. I think it's a 16,000.
It is.
They're all different, so forgive me for not
16,000 on M11.
It's fast. So the electronic shutter does mitigate that to a degree. Now, there will be scenarios where you don't want to use the electronic shutter if your photograph is something that's moving, for example, because you may get a little bit of rolling shutter effect if they're moving fast enough. So that's where the ND filter or the neutral density filter will be useful. So even though we have electronic shutters that go very fast, there still may be times when a neutral density filter is your friend.
Yes.
So if you're working with ultra fast glass in bright environments and you plan on shooting wide open a lot, I do recommend an ND filter, at least 3 stops or 4 stops. More than that, and you're starting to get into like unnecessarily slowing down.
Yeah. Anything more than that, you're in landscape territory trying to shoot waterfalls.
Right, because that's the other reason, just quickly touch on like what David does to do, use ND filters to dramatically slow down your shutter speed while you're on a tripod to change the look of water or moving clouds for long exposures.
Exactly. Fantastic.
Cool. All right, let's keep going.
Okay. Next one is, let me see, also for Josh.
Okay.
Have you guys ever used the Leica Zero reissue? I was thinking of buying it as something I would use very sporadically, maybe 4 or 5 rolls of film per year. Do you think the camera's fun to use? And do you think I might get some good shots from it?
Yeah. So the Zero Series reissue was a fun camera that Leica did, I think like 10 years ago, maybe a little bit less. Can't remember. I know we sold them new. But what it was a modern iteration of the Zero Series, which was the very, very first Leica. So I actually have one.
Oh, do you have one?
I do.
Nice.
I
I was going to see if I could find one.
No, you don't need to find one. I have it right here. I have to get it out of the case. So it looks like that. Hold on, we got a close up on it. Here we go. I'll clean up this mess a little bit.
Nice.
Get a close up. So it's got a fixed lens that comes out. I'll show you. It's got this cute little cap on it. There we go. We got to lock it in. So it is a 50 millimeter astigmat. I'll be honest with you. I'm an M guy and newer, so this is a little bit out of my expertise, but I do happen to like these because they look awesome. And of course, if you're a black paint enthusiast, oh, thank you, David. This is black paint over brass, so it is beautiful, as you can see. This camera was CLA'd in Germany last year, if I recall. This one is not for sale yet, but it will be for sale very soon. You wind it like that. Got a very satisfying shutter, and of course, a little flip-up viewfinder, because this is not a rangefinder. So, you know, you got to do your best on this. So yeah, I think if you wanted to give yourself a challenge, for sure, it's definitely not practical because you have to trim the film with a guide to get it to fit. You know, it's a challenging camera to use, but it's beautiful and it's a cool way to kind of get in touch with Leica's roots without having to spend $1 million on a Zero Series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't want to actually use one of those.
Right. That, I mean, that would be a pretty big flex if you shot with a real Zero Series. I'm considering that the last one sold for like $15 million or something.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Awesome.
Nice.
Cool question. All right. I think it's David's turn to get a
All right,
question.
David.
Okay.
Let's throw something at him. What are the best lenses to use with the M digital cameras? Particularly interested in which one gives the best corner-to-corner sharpness and is topping down always necessary to get the best performance relative to native M lenses?
That's a... Yes, of course.
Please, Sam.
Corner-to-corner sharpness.
Okay, let me... The short version is all M lenses are really nice. There are reference level M lenses and there are mainline M lenses. Of course, Leica doesn't necessarily tell you that apart from maybe the Appo lenses. So if you are looking for, I'd say, the peak optical performance where you can use any aperture, because some of the differences will be mitigated on other lenses as you stop down. So if you're shooting a 35 Appo Summicron at f8 and you're shooting a, I think, is this a regular one?
35 Summicron is on the M.
Yeah, I'll just
point
to it.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay.
Looks like that.
So if you're shooting a non-Appo Summicron 35 aspheric, or you're shooting a Appo M 35 aspheric, and you're shooting both f8, would you really see a huge difference?
Well, interestingly enough,
Because Josh has tested all this.
yes, you will see a difference if everything else is the same and you're working in an extremely controlled manner.
Right.
So landscape architecture, it's not dramatic, especially at f8,
Right.
but it's slight. So if you're in need of that, just that 10/10 performance on an M lens, You
I'd say,
are getting what you're paying for.
And I would say especially sharpness into the corners, right? Because
Yes.
that's a
Right, center
that's a big-
sharpness is great on all of them. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, if we talk about f2, where you're shooting the 35 Appo wide open at f2, or you're shooting the non-Appo at f2, yeah, there's going to be a pretty noticeable difference both in terms of center sharpness as well, even more dramatically, corner performance. Just the level of control over aberrations, over flatness of field, sharpness corner to corner is just going to be better on a lens like the 35 Appo Summicron. And similarly, 50 Appo might be your best 50 option. And again, best is relative here because to use our catchphrase, it depends. You're
going to hear that a lot today.
If you need the look of a Summilux, a 1.4, and you need that 1.4 wide open for that creamy dreaminess, and you don't want the look of Summicron, does it matter if the 50 Appo Summicron is optically a superior lens to 50 Summilux? No, because it doesn't fit your needs. That's why kind of leading with, yes, these are the best lenses, but it doesn't mean they're the best for your photography. And that's why Leica makes a variety of lenses.
That's right.
Well, don't just make one.
And I'll throw in one last point, which is if you're looking at a Leica ecosystem and you're asking yourself kind of, or making a list of the things that matter most, and before you make your investment or where you expand your kit, and if sharpness and image quality is your number one metric, don't get M lenses.
I know where you're going to
Get
go.
SL Appo Summicron lenses. I mean, that's just simply put, the Appo SL Summicrons are the sharpest lenses Leica has ever made. Now, I'm not just saying this in some biased Leica salesman kind of way.
It's real.
I've tested all of them extensively. You can watch 5 years of this show or over and over and over again. The Appo SL primes absolutely demolish everything else that I throw at them. I mean, even these incredible flagship M lenses like the 35 Appo, 75 Noctilux, 90 Summilux lenses that are the pinnacle of design that Leica can do for their M system, the Appo SL Summicrons simply are the best.
Yes, I will reiterate that.
Yeah.
So the Appo Summicron SL lenses, 21, 28, where's 24, guys? Come on. Anyway, but save that for the wish list episode. 21, 28, 35, 50, 75, 90. All at f2, all in the exact same size because they all share the housing but they look different from the front. They are, without a doubt, like just objectively, no pun intended, they are the best of each of those focal lengths that Leica has ever produced. So the best 21, the best 28, the best 35, the best 50, the best 75, the best 90 for any system ever. Whether the SL system is for you or you're really an M shooter, again, that's another criteria. But like Josh is saying, if your number one, 100% top criteria is absolute top image quality across the board at every focal length, every aperture, corner to corner, SL is the way to go. And that's what I use for my landscape work. But the M still holds a place in my heart with travel and street photography and things like that, where you want something that's just a little bit smaller, lighter, less obtrusive.
Next question. We're getting. I can already tell we're like gonna.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. For Josh, certain vintage 35mm Leica lenses sometimes come with goggles, but often I've seen listings without them. Can I use these lenses on my film and digital Leica cameras without the goggles attached?
So, early 35mm lenses often came from Leica in the M system with and without goggles on them. And I have an example here. Which I apologize for the rustling bag situation. If there's any cats watching, don't get too excited.
I think you're triggering some people there.
And the reason for these goggles is because the Leica M3 did not have frame lines for 35mm lenses because it had a much higher magnification viewfinder than the cameras that came after it. So 35mm lenses with goggles essentially reverse magnified or demagnified the M3's viewfinder to allow you to actually see the framing of 35mm. And there is, I think, a lot of misconception about the functionality of these lenses. The reality is these work on everything. So for example, I can grab something without a grip on it. We have an M11P, there we go. M11P, there we go.
It's all matchy too.
That's right. And I have my 35 Summicron. Obviously it mounts just fine. And I can still see the rangefinder patch, and I can actually check if I use live view. I can do a magnified live view. I can focus on something in the studio here with the rangefinder, and I can see it's tack sharp. So even though the goggles make it look kind of funky, it's sort of like widescreen, I can still see the frame lines I can still focus the rangefinder. It just looks a little bit funky. But the other advantage that a lot of these goggled lenses have over their non-goggled counterparts is they focus closer. So even though the goggled lenses, especially the Summilux versions, are sort of less appreciated by collectors, maybe because they're just not as visually appealing in a classic sense, in some ways they're actually more useful because they focus closer. And you could also mount this on an SL, which I will briefly show you before we move on. We have an adapter. There we go. Thank you, sir. I'll do this the right way here. There we are. Ta-da! Worked perfectly fine.
It looks
cool. It looks awesome. You want to do a close-up so I can see what this looks like? Yeah, here.
That looks
so like sci-fi.
It's very cyber.
But it works perfectly fine.
Oh, it's like steampunk, right?
Like obviously the goggles in this case do not impede at all because I'm using an electronic viewfinder. So I'm gonna open up here. So here I just use my focus magnification.
That's funny.
And these lenses actually look really cool. So this is a lens we actually have for sale. What's cool is it has, where to go, the original box, which I absolutely love. These retro boxes are super cool. So in short, you can use the goggled lenses on any of the cameras and they work fine. They just look a little bit funky, that's all.
Or cool, depending on
cool. I think they look cool. I'm personally a huge fan. If you've ever dealt with me about the vintage 25 Summiluxes, you know I love the ones with the goggles because they go down to 0.65 meters versus 1 meter for the non-goggled counterpart.
Very crazy, very crazy.
Super, super cool.
Which actually, Jose, I think there was a question about that.
About?
Minimum focus distance.
You're making a bounce around now. You know how many questions he has to go through.
Right,
This poor man. Just go to the next one. Let's not lose our minds here.
When I see it, I'll
Yeah,
ask it.
he'll call it.
You're like, oh, that's the one.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. David, is the Leica micro adapter M a way to get a bit closer
There
to
you
my
go.
subject? Oh, is that the one?
Yep.
When using older Leica lenses of 1 meter, yeah, or would that not work?
Yep.
Okay. So let me just show this here. Infinity lock. Okay. Yeah.
What are you looking for?
Yeah. Okay. No, just the focus scale.
Okay.
All right. Jose, give me a top-down view if you can. Sure. All right. So this is an older lens. As you can see here, this is a...
Well, that is a absolutely gorgeous 50 Summicron version 1 rigid, which is also for sale on LeicaStormio.com.
Okay.
Just got it back from Dad.
Yeah. Perfect.
I'm just saying. Go back to David.
Yeah, okay, here we go. So, this is a 50 Quran, but you'll notice that the minimum distance here is, well, maybe you can't see, but it says 3 feet 4 inches. This actually has no metric scale, but that is a meter. So this is a 1 meter minimum focus distance, just like the question asked, versus a modern lens, let's say this 50 Summicron, Appo, goes down to 0.7 meters. So the question is, can we use this macro adapter here to reduce the minimum focus distance? The answer is kind of, because obviously these lenses will mount on here, and you can use a 50 millimeter easily on the macro adapter. You can't use lenses wider than 35. Basically, it just doesn't work. The problem with this is no longer a full range lens. So sure, you can focus a lot closer. This is going to reduce the minimum focus distance significantly from the 1 meter. But when I go to infinity, you aren't going to be able to get infinity focus.
Or anywhere near it.
Or anywhere near, right. It'll be 2 feet away maybe.
Less.
Yeah. So you would have to remove the lens when you wanted to use full range. So the answer is, and you can come back to full size. The answer is no, you can use this for macro work with any lens, including a vintage lens, but you're not able to reduce the minimum focus distance on a lens significantly without going only into the macro range. And that is if we're using a macro adapter or say the L Pro front diopter would have the same effect.
The only exception to this is if you use the 90 macro Elmar, because that lens is also collapsible, and you use it with the macro adapter M, the newer one.
Yeah.
Those two things together will actually give you the full range from the super macro close focus to infinity, right, because the lens collapses.
The exact distance.
Correct.
Or exact depth of
Correct.
this.
So the 90 macros extension and collapsing area is exactly the same as the width of the macro adapter. So when you have them together, it sort of cancels each other out, whether you have the lens collapsed or not.
Exactly. So the answer is no, I guess.
Yeah.
But so vintage lenses are cool. And this kind of leads back to Josh's answer from a few minutes ago, which is that's a reason to get goggle lenses because you can have the vintage look with modern minimum focus distance.
Well said. Next question.
There you go.
Okay. David, how will you compare the renderings of the Leica Q2 or Q3 28mm lens versus the Q3 43 lens, both wide open and stop down?
It's been a while since you dropped something.
Never
It
happened.
wasn't a lens though, so doesn't
Macro
count.
adapter.
Doesn't count. I'll take that. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyway.
I just got nervous with the question. The rendering of a Q3 28 versus or Q2 28 with the same lens.
Yeah.
So we've actually, just to clarify, the original Q, just the Q, the Q2 and the Q3 all come with the same 28mm f1.7 Summilux lens. The new Q3 43, as you can see with the gray leatherette here, very sexy, comes with a brand new 43mm Appo Summicron. So this is an f2 lens, that is a 1.7 lens on the Q3. The rendering is, I would say, let me back up 1 second. The look from the cameras is very similar. I know there's a question later on, and I'm going to show some pictures, but basically, I've shot these cameras now side by side, and as I just flip through the images, sometimes I have a hard time telling them apart unless they're shot specifically to their strengths. So let's say the 28, knowing that it's a wider view, versus the 43, which is a tighter view, which is also more keyed in for portrait work, I'd say, on the 43. And the 28 is more for environmental work or for landscape. But in terms of the actual look of the lenses, I think they're really close, especially paired up with the same body on the back end, because the Q3 28 and the Q3 43 share the same imaging pipeline behind the lens. Very similar. And when I get around to showing some images in a little bit, you'll see that they are nearly indistinguishable from each other, similar to what you would expect if you're shooting on an M11 with the same, call it, same family of lenses. So if I was shooting with a 28mm Summilux on an M11, and I was shooting with a 50mm Appo Summicron, that's a very close comparison because you have a 28 Summilux versus a 50 Cron. And I think they kind of mirror the look of that. So if you're used to that on M, this is what you could be used to on Q. And I'm going to say it now, and I'm going to say it a million more times. I've seen a lot of people where they're migrating from the Q3 28mm to the Q3 43. And to me, it's a little bonkers because they're so different and they work so well together. I mean, they are like the power couple here. Shooting with the Q3, the Q3 43 together, they're light, they're easy to carry, they're weather sealed.
I'll just
Amazing.
interrupt you for a second. I don't think anyone with me, at least that I can think of, has ever traded a 28 Summilux for a 50 Appo.
Right.
So that's what you're doing when you trade a Q3 for a Q3 43. It's like, well, wait, there's two different things.
Right.
They work so well together.
They really do. It's like peas and carrots.
Yeah. Okay. Next question.
That's it for me. Go.
All right. Next one. For Josh. How frequently should Leica lenses be CLA'd if they are used fairly frequently, at least once a month, and treated with care? Wiped clean with a lens cloth, never dropped, etc. Should older vintage lenses be serviced more frequently than newer lenses, or vice versa?
My motto is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, for the most part. Lenses don't require any kind of regular maintenance. You just basically use it until it has an issue. Modern lenses, it's pretty rare. You know, you're not going to get haze or fungus in a modern lens unless you're storing it really improperly. But since the question applied to lenses are being handled with care, I would say no. I mean, you don't. If you start to notice the calibration is off, although that's probably more likely your camera, you can have it serviced. But I deal with a lot of modern glass through the store, and it's pretty rare, aside from like accidental damage or something serious like that, it's pretty rare that they need to get serviced. Vintage lenses even less so. I think because of how delicate they are, you don't want them being taken apart and put back together any more than they have to. So for me, I'm only going to get a vintage lens serviced if it really needs it. Now, it's a little bit disproportionate since we're reselling them at Leica Store Miami, so obviously we want them to be as good as they can get. But as an individual user, I really just say, only get it serviced if it's not performing in a way to get you the pictures you want. If it's doing its job, if it's focusing, the aperture's stopping down, it's not full of dirt and fungus, keep using it. Easy.
So I have a follow-up question for you.
Fire away.
What if you are a photojournalist shooting in the desert and you're constantly with, wherever people photograph in the desert, in the Sahara, wherever, and there's just, the dust is super, super fine. It gets in everything and everywhere.
Yeah. I know that.
Now, would you recommend for a user like that? And I would not qualify that as like
handled
with care.
yes.
But let's just say for that kind of photographer
Yeah.
who's shooting in a high, fine particulate,
we get it. Keep going.
or really high moisture.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
Someone like me who's shooting like around water and waterfalls.
Okay.
Does it make some sense to send it into Leica to get it cleaning serviced?
And I'll tell you why. This equipment is so much more durable than you realize that, I'll say it again, I'll reiterate this. If it's continuing to make good pictures for you, do not send it in for service. Simple as that. Now, it's different if you're planning on selling it and you want to make sure the next owner has years of good use. That's different. But if you're just an individual user, I don't really care what you're doing to it. If you've gone to the desert and it's got the moisture, but it's still working fine,
Sure.
I don't really think it needs to go for service. I think preemptive service, all that's going to do is clog up like a customer care's pipeline for no reason. If it has an issue, meaning your images aren't sharp anymore, or the aperture blades don't stop down,
or makes a grinding
it's not
noise.
mounting right, or it's grinding when you're focusing, or the focusing sticks, yes, of course, send it in. But don't just send it in for the sake of sending it in. I just don't think that's the way to do it.
Sure. All right.
Next.
All right. Yeah, sometimes like a local, service to get it clean after like a trip like that, I can use, get the camera clean. It doesn't need to be serviced every time. So,
You should watch Colin's video, by the way, a little of how he cleans his lenses. I'll just leave it at that.
Keep going.
Josh, do you recommend registering your newly purchased used Leica equipment at www.club.leica-camera.com? If
Yes.
so, why?
So everything you buy, serialized, camera or lens from Leica, you would want to register on Leica's website in the Club Leica or the Leica owners area. If you buy a new, this is just for the US, I don't know how it works around outside the US, but in the US, if you buy a new Leica camera or lens from an authorized Leica dealer, even also I think the Leica watches, you get an extra year of warranty. Now, the key here is simply registering it does not activate the extended warranty. I cannot tell you how many times I need to say this. Once you register it, you're then presented with a little radio, a little checkbox thing to say activate. You click that, and then it expands at the bottom. You fill in some info, and then you can activate the extended warranty. That's really, really important. It's free money for you because you're basically making the item worth more by adding more warranty. For used equipment, it's not about the warranty, it's just about keeping track of what you have. So if something happens, lost, theft, whatever, you have a record of what you own and the serial number. Just good practice. It's also a nice place to see all your gear in one shot. Whether for insurance purposes or trip planning purposes, you go to your registration area and you see everything listed there. So I see no downside in registering your equipment. I will say the last thing is when you sell it or trade it, please delete it so that the next owner can register without us having to go to Leica and have them reset it and all that rigmarole. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Okay.
Next.
Cool. All right. So, how does multi-coating affect a lens, David?
Sure. That is one of if you talk to Peter Carba, who's famed lens designer at Leica, he once told me that multi-coating was one of those paradigm shifts in lens design and a giant leap forward in optical performance. So that was, I'm trying to think of when multi-coating was basically widespread, but maybe in the 70s, I think, somewhere in there. I mean, right now, all lenses are multi-coated, and you can kind of see if they catch the light. Different lenses have slightly different colorations on the front elements. They have different multi-coatings. Filters are multi-coated, if they say MRC. And basically, it reduces reflections, it increases contrast, reduces veiling flare, all of those things. And it's just a good thing. It also, early coatings from, say, the 1950s were soft. So you might see some vintage lenses with cleaning marks on them where the coating actually is getting rubbed off. Newer coatings are much harder. Leica currently uses a really cool, like science fiction-y plasma deposition process, which is like,
I love it.
I mean, plasma. Who doesn't love plasma?
I know, right?
So they actually take these solid elements and they vaporize them in a chamber. You can actually see it in the factory. if you go on a tour, and it settles and provides a very, very thin coating on the optical lenses that after they grind and polish them. So the coating is one of the last steps. And yeah, it protects the lens because they're really hard and durable now. On SL glass, for instance, they use something additionally called Aquadura, which is actually a hydrophobic coating that they apply, and that helps water just bead off. It makes cleaning a lot easier when you're outdoors. But basically, I mean, good luck finding a non-coated lens.
And if you had both plasma and hydrophobic on your Red Up Front Countertop bingo card, make sure you check them off and submit your completed cards at the end of the episode.
David using big words.
Next question, please. That was a good answer.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. I love my M11 monochrome, but realize now that the files do take more work to make less flat. Does David spend a lot of time editing his M11 files? Any tips? And would an M10 monochrome require less editing?
I know you want to answer this, so answer it shortly.
I'm going to answer shortly.
You have a long answer for this.
So, no, I have a really short answer.
Go.
The short answer is you should download my Lightroom preset for the M11 monochrome and the M10 monochrome, which I can bring up for you and show you where that is. So, Jose. Magic computer. Okay. Ooh, what a beautiful watch. All right. So under technical articles, you can scroll down to Lightroom presets for Leica cameras. And
way at the bottom.
If you don't, you can read all of the thought process of me explaining all this. But if you just want the actual thing, here you go. M11 monochrome adaptive preset is right here. It's number 2. Adaptive means that it adjusts based on what your ISO is in terms of how it scales the settings. You can loop back here. Yeah, you can loop back. Sorry, you can. That means at high ISO, it applies more noise reduction. It applies less presence adjustments like clarity and texture and things like that to maximize at all ISO settings. It's variable. But the answer is when I import any of my photos, and you can see I've got presets for every camera. I have...
Don't say that. Cause
okay, not every camera. Not every camera. A few are missing.
Okay.
Most every camera that I use or have used, I have presets for because I've developed it for my own workflow. When I'm importing images into Lightroom, I apply these on import, which means every single file that comes in has the preset applied, which means I'm 90% of the way there in terms of the editing process per camera. So do I notice that the M11 files are flat? No, because the preset is taking care of it because I noticed the files were flat when I created the preset.
Right, so just to interrupt and also to summarize.
Yeah.
The most amount of work you'll have editing files is the first time you use the camera. Once you understand and develop your own preset or use one of David's presets, then it's a heck of a lot easier until you get another new camera, and then you can always base the new camera's preset off the old one and tweak from there.
Yes.
That's the summary version.
Yes.
But David's presets are excellent. I recommend you download them. They only cost $9.95.
No.
Venmo directly to me.
They are actually free.
They're free.
They're free. They're 100% free.
I was just about to retire, and you just killed me.
Damn.
Right. Next question, Jose.
All right, let's see. Okay, this can be for the both of you. So, if the typical Leica photographer could receive a human firmware update,
I love this question.
what abilities, approaches, or insights, in your opinion, would be most valuable to improve their photography skills and/or enjoyment?
Well, I want Jose to go first.
Yeah, I think we should all three answer this in the shortest way possible, and then we'll move on.
Yeah.
This is a great question.
Well, I would say, the most valuable to improve would be to just go out with one lens.
Oh.
Like go out with one prime lens.
So the firmware actually is limiting you to one lens only.
That's right.
It doesn't work with
exactly,
any of the
like,
ones.
That's right.
Don't always try to take everything. Just go with one and challenge yourself and or a Q. Just go with a Q and you know.
Okay.
But sometimes taking too many lenses is like too much. Like,
All right. Josh.
Okay.
What do you got?
Oh, mine is use your gear more because it simply comes down to the fact that if you wait until your next big trip to take your SL3 out, you're going to have a really hard time remembering what all the buttons and settings do. So my firmware update is forcing you to take your camera with you more places, more of the time, so that you have more of that muscle memory to go off of when it's actually time to make really good shots. Yeah.
Okay.
What's yours?
What is mine?
More snacks. Well,
take everything.
No, that's right. No, David's firmware, the firmware update he actually needs is to use lens caps and rear caps, but what are you going to say?
Oh, gosh. Feature in a human. Let's see. I would say go to more places. So Josh is use it more. I'm saying go to new places to basically push yourself to have different experiences where you're putting the gear into use, but in a little bit different way than you did previously. Because you can learn by going into your backyard and shooting, the same bird feeder every day, but you can learn a lot more by shooting, birds in Alaska or something, right?
Go.
So use it. I'm going to tack on to Josh's. Use it, but push yourself into different environments to.
We could do a whole episode on this question.
I like
think,
this.
but
I like
before
this.
we do that, let's go on to the next one.
next
That's a great question, though.
Yeah. All right, Josh. Do you think the 35mm Appo Summicron and the 50 Appo Summicron are overkill for film photography with a medium grain film like Il4 HP5 or Tri-X? Would you get the same results, same level of sharpness and detail on those films if you use less expensive M lenses?
Well, the key word in that sentence is overkill, because overkill is subjective. And I'll say this again, because it depends. If you're saying overkill meaning you won't notice the difference between an Appo lens and a non-Appo lens on film, then you will, because sharpness is sharpness. And sure, film is not as demanding as a digital sensor, but it's still pretty demanding. I mean, you look at a long history of Leica lenses far before digital,
Like this.
like the 180 Appo R, or some of the other Appo lenses or ASPH lenses they've manufactured for decades and decades and decades. Leica has been chasing optical performance long before digital cameras were a thing. So if your objective, whether you're shooting film or digital, is the highest performance, then go with a sharper lens. Now, you may get not as big of a delta, although it's still going to be pretty big with a Appo versus non-Appo, but maybe on something like 50 Lux version 1 and 50 Lux version 2, a spheric, maybe the differences aren't as much because those lenses really were tweaked more for digital. But I think if you're saying an Appo 35 Summicron versus a non-Appo, yeah, you're going to see a difference wide open without a doubt.
It's kind of an interesting question. Yeah. And I think it'd also depend on the film, just like it would depend on the same digital body. So
Very true.
if a high resolution film like, I mean, you didn't give those examples, but a high resolution film like Ektar 125, or if you can find like some, Ektachrome 100 or whatever, that's a super fine grain, super high quality film, or Panax or whatever, versus a Tri-X or a Delta or something like that, where you're not going to really notice it. So but all that goes back to like Josh said. I mean, Leica was making Appo lenses decades before before digital came out. So yeah, they clearly were chasing this, and there was film that could take advantage of that. You may not be using it if you're using, something more for the look, and you want that vintagey vibe. You may not want the absolute sharpness and crispness of a high resolution film paired with an Appo lens.
Yeah. All right, next question.
Jose, what do you got?
Let's keep going.
Okay. David, back in my film days, I loved my original 3.4 Super Angulon, but sold it when I went digital. Which of Leica's 21mm lenses that function on digital M's is the smallest, lightest? I don't need speed, and I don't want to carry more weight than necessary.
This one.
Okay, next question.
There you go. Yeah. Here, you get a top-down view. You want? This is the 21 Super Elmar. It is super. It is an f3.4. It is my personal favorite 21 that Leica has ever made, of all of them, including M and R lenses. And it is obviously very, very small, even smaller if you take the integrated shade off. You can see it is a tiny little guy. It's even smaller than a 50 Cron. And it's so sharp. Got tons of depth of field if you want to do zone focusing, which I love this lens for. And color's great, contrast is great, not subject to flare. It's solid all around.
Yeah.
And given a choice of a 21 Summilux 1.4 or this 3.4, 3.4 all day, every day.
Good answer. Good question. What's next?
Agreed. All right.
Agree.
This one just came in, but it's a good question. Are Leica M lenses designed to be shot wide open?
I mean,
Sure.
the classic answer is yes. And I think the reason for that is what people sometimes excessively associate M glass with sharpness. M glass is about look, in my opinion. But really, what that really means, when you dig deeper, it means wide open look.
Sure.
And wide open performance. So yes, I think M lenses are designed for to give their most character and their most fun rendering wide open, but it doesn't mean they're all the sharpest wide open. They are sharper when you stop them down. Now the Appo SL primes, which we loved, are the same sharpness, but the M lenses are different. So I would say if you're paying for a Summilux lens, use the f1.4. That's how I'll put that.
Sure.
I think if you bought that lens, it's partly because you want to use it at 1.4.
Yeah.
You know.
But don't feel bad about stopping down because you want your image to look the way you want it to look.
Right. I'll give you just a quick add-on to that, which
shocked.
is, I know, which is back in the day, back in the
here we
film
go.
days, no,
Okay.
you had to have a certain maximum aperture to shoot in a certain kind of lighting condition. If you were trying to shoot in low light, that is why the Noctilux was originally made, because film just didn't shoot at, 50,000 ISO like a modern digital camera. So you were limited to much, much slower film, no image stabilization, right? You needed the light gathering of that. I think over time, as the technology's improved, especially here we are 15 years, 16, no, more than 17 years of digital M.
No, 20 years.
Is it 20 now?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Time flies.
It's almost 20 years. We did 15 years of digital M, almost 5 years.
Wow, okay, yeah. So almost 20 years of digital M's. Now it's not a matter of needing that light gathering capacity. Sure, with an M8, you could shoot at like 640 ISO. On a modern, let's go all the way, like M11 monochrome, you really can actually shoot it at 40,000 ISO with excellent results. And
This was a short story.
it is a short story. So the point is, over time, we've switched from fast aperture being a need to now it being, for just getting an image. Now it's about getting an image that you want that look for, right? Which is what Josh is saying.
Yeah.
So if you're paying for a Noctilux, shoot it like a Noctilux. If you're going to shoot it at 2.8 all the time, get a Summicron. Like, you don't need the Noctilux if you're going to be stopping it down.
Right.
And I think that's really the point of this whole thing is, if you're buying a beast like this, use it. And use it for the look that it can create that the slower lens cannot.
Next question. I know we have so many, so we're trying here.
Yeah.
All right. So regarding the new 50 Summilux M, is it basically the same as the version 3?
Well, I'll give a short answer because we covered this in our last episode. Leica announced a new lens in the classic line last month. It's all a blur. And it is a 50 Summilux pre-aspheric. And what it kind of combines is the best qualities of the versions 1, 2, and 3. The optical design is based on the version 2, but of course the version 3 shared the same optics as the version 2. So
it's a combination of three.
it's a combination
lenses.
of all three. We will eventually do more content with that. We don't have one in our sort of demo pool, so it's still kind of, elusive, but more to come on that lens for sure.
Awesome. Okay. What is your go-to Leica M? 1 lens, 2 lens, and 3 lens kit for travel?
That's a David question.
David.
I mean, this isn't all of us.
Well, I know, but you are the best. Well, 1 lens is that he can't possibly take.
One lens. One lens.
All right.
For an M.
Which is what?
Well, it's a toss-up.
Well, I know, but tell him what that is.
This is a 35 Appo
Thank
Summicron, or possibly a 35 Summilux, the newest one with close focusing. I think both are fantastic. I kind of dabble one to the other depending on the mood, how the mood strikes, and what I'm going to be photographing. If I'm shooting a lot inside, and I actually, I just said you don't need the light, but sometimes you need that extra stop. I like to shoot artisans and things like that in their craft shops, and it's pretty dark, it's pretty small. And I also like the look because the 1.4 allows you, when you're doing environmental portraiture, to declutter a cluttered background a lot easier than an F2 is. That's a one camera. Let's see.
One lens, you mean?
Oh, one camera, one lens.
Yeah.
So what's your one camera, one lens?
We don't have time for all of us to share it. So just you do your thing. We had about 6 billion more questions.
Right. What's the other question?
Keeping us moving.
2 lens?
Yeah, 2 lenses. So if you had to add a second to the 35 Appo, what are you going to add? You're going to add this.
Yeah, I'm going to add this.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to say a 35, either 1.4 or f2 Appo, and a 75 f2 Appo, which is a phenomenal lens, gorgeous rendering, really, really pleasing, wonderful for portraits, for details, and it's really not much larger than a 50, but it's 50% longer focal length than a 50, so it gives you adequate separation between 35 and 75. If I was doing... Yep.
So I already know exactly what.
And if I was doing 3 lenses, just add in the 21 into there. Great for street, for setting hyperfocal or zone focus, and just walking into a crowded street market or something like that, and getting those kind of shots. Also being able to do interior architecture, exterior architecture, some light landscape. That's what I would do for.
There you go. Good answer.
lenses. Yeah.
Next question. Thank you, David. It's good.
All right. We kind of answered this, but if you want to quickly answer this, let's see. I know the Appo Summicrons perform better than the standard Summicrons wide open, but is there that much of a difference at f5.6 and
Let
f8?
Josh take this one.
It certainly diminishes as you stop down, but I've tested these. I don't usually go past 5.6 in my testing, but even so, you see a difference. In the center, no. In the corners, absolutely. Chromatic aberration, absolutely. There's less of it. So even if you're stopping down, you're seeing a difference. It's just not as dramatic. So it really comes down to cost benefit. If you're shooting a lot stop down, you may or may not be worth it unless you're really in need of that ultimate level of performance. But if you're shooting a lot wide open, then you're certainly going to benefit from that.
Okay.
Moving on.
Question for David. How was your experience with using the Q343 and Q3 in Bhutan?
Well, I guess the end of the show. He's going to talk about this for the next hour. All right.
Now, briefly. So I already talked about. I'll kind of skip that. So rewind 10 minutes where I talked about having the Q3 and the Q343 as really good companions with each other. And now I will just show a few images.
I just looked at how many are in that folder.
Stop.
Oh,
Wait,
my
hold on.
The new Red Dot Form Camera Talk Extended Edition, 6 hours long.
Yeah. Hold on. Okay, so
Give me a second.
how do you make these bigger? I don't know.
Just double click, bro.
No. I mean like bigger.
Oh, go to
thumbnails.
view, top in the middle, and then extra large icons.
I want extra large. There we go. Okay. Good. And how do I hide that? I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So
Well, you can.
that's fine.
That's okay.
So let's just take, for example, what I think. Let's say, think something like this. Okay, start with this.
Is it opening
Oh.
something?
It's opening somewhere.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
All right, Jose,
Can Jose go to the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, he can. Yeah.
you got that? Sorry. Okay. That kills me, that little white line.
Oh my goodness. There we go.
So this is a Q328 because sometimes you can't back up any further. This is a little small room, and being able to do environmental portraiture is, I think, a strong suit of the Q328 version. It's still perfectly rectilinear because that 28 is a astonishingly good lens, right? Look at all the straight lines in here. Nothing's curving or bowing, which is just a testament to how good that lens is. If we look at, say, doing tighter in portraiture, or what I love, let's just grab one here. Okay. So this is more the look of the Q343, where you have the ability to do work, work with your subject, and it does provide some really nice isolation, super, super crisp details. Another simple, okay. Another example is being able to shoot details. The Q343 lens is ridiculously good. This is in the close focus range, and it focuses nice and quick, and it just looks, or the macro mode, and it just looks fantastic. So I think that if we're just like thumbing around through these, it doesn't necessarily, here's another one with the 43, where I'm using it for the isolation, and it's just phenomenally good, right? And if I'm just going through, I don't actually, without looking, I may not actually know what is 28 and 43 without giving it a second glance. That's why I said they just sort of work really well together, where sometimes you're doing detail work, let's say like this was detail work of the 43, and then sometimes you just need to back up, it's 43, or do a wider environmental shot. So could I have shot only with the 43? Probably. But I wouldn't be able to get a lot of the tight interiors I got, or more wide sweeping things outside. And I think the 43 is more suited to stuff like this, where you're doing more macro work, where it's flat field or
So far,
flat field.
I'm impressed. There hasn't been a single bicycle photo.
There's are there no bicycles?
Because every trip David goes on, he does at least one bicycle.
Oh
photo.
no, there's a lot of hands.
These are beautiful.
Yeah. So
Well, I think this demonstrates two things, if I may interrupt for a moment.
Go ahead.
Number one, what you can expect on a Leica Store Miami photo workshop, because that's what this was taken on. It wasn't just David randomly going to Bhutan for
I didn't randomly go there?
You kind of did, actually, because it was so last minute. But number one, but it also shows you that these cameras can work really, really well in concert with each other, and kind of you can break down, just like David is doing, the close-up work, the isolation work, the more like
Well, these are the 28s of that same.
exactly.
person,
There you go.
Right.
So they're more environmental.
So here is, I could tell you, I know for a fact. So this is 28.
That's beautiful.
This is 28, 28, 28, right, of that same woman with the loom. So I was using the close-up shots with the 43 and, wider scene setting shots with the 28. And they just work really, really well together. And that actually is real. I have no explanation for that. If there's a meteorologist or physicist who wants to explain why the whole sky turned like a big circle for 30 minutes, please let me know. But basically, it just does an amazing stuff. So this is a 28 where you can't physically change perspective and a lot is happening. This is, was a festival and they had this big smoke thing and it's just awesome. I mean, I can't tell you how good these cameras perform in terms of being able to capture a variety of moments. The color, this is the 43, and just that really lovely isolation, sharpness, but natural look. So you can come back to us here. Basically, yeah, as I flip through, I can't tell you, oh, that's a 28 or 43 unless I specifically remember. And the reality is I was shooting both cameras at the same time. I had one across this way, one across that way, and I'm just picking up the one where the focal length made sense, as if I was changing lenses without changing lenses.
Right, that's what I was going to say. This is like if you had your M with you and you had a 28 and a 50 and you're just switching, or had two M bodies.
Exactly.
Except now you have autofocus, weather sealing, macro mode, EVF, face detection. Yeah.
Flip screen.
That was great.
What if you had an SL3 with two lenses? Isn't that the same thing?
No. Number one, if I can answer for you.
Please, go ahead and answer
way
for
more
me.
intimidating in environments like this. Also, you still have to change lenses, whereas David's cameras are much faster. Now, of course, you could have two SL3s, way heavier. And also, you're not going to get that close focus function. So I still think that in these kind of environments where David's working in tight spaces with lots of different subjects, different ages, close focus, further away, I think those two cameras were, I mean, he proved it, that those two cameras were exactly what he needed to do. Good job.
I mean, listen, flying for 3 days to get there, I'm not going to lie, and you could probably rewind, because I think we did an episode the day before I left.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that I wasn't nervous or have second thoughts about just bringing those. It's a long way to go. It's a long way to go. It's one thing if I go to New York City that I can just hop on a plane and be in 2 hours, and I could always take more pictures in New York City. But it's like, I'm not going to Bhutan every day, and it is an awful long way to get there.
Yeah.
And they just worked perfectly. I mean, I can't say how pleased I was. And it's true, when you're shooting all of these portraits and you're in these tight spaces and getting up in people's face, having a small camera like this is so much less intimidating than having a larger professional looking camera and really getting up in their grill. So
Good job.
I'm going to make that point again because I made it earlier. I don't understand why you would trade in a Q3 28 for a Q3 43. It's like Josh is saying, would you trade in a 28 millimeter lens for a 50 millimeter lens? Like, they work together, not separately.
As he just proved.
And, you're just getting an extra backup body too.
That's right.
You're getting an extra lens with a backup body.
Next question.
All right.
That was great, though. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Josh. Will Leica Store Miami be having another photo walk?
Yes. When, I don't know, but we have done in the past, we've done photo walks. We've done them on our own. We've done them with Leica, where people come to the store, they get to try out all kinds of awesome gear. We want to do it again. We don't have enough Leica stuff in our demo pool to give everybody something, so we need to usually work with Leica on that. But what I would say is if you're local and you're interested in doing a photo walk, let us know, because the more feedback we get, the more likely we are to be able to convince Leica and our other partners to give us the support we need. So more to come for sure, hopefully before the weather gets too hot. But
Too late.
stay in touch with us, for sure.
All right. Do you think my SO2 is good enough in low light for the Moab Astro photography workshop? Should I rent an SO2S?
Yes, you should. No and yes. I would not recommend an SL2. It's a phenomenal camera. It was my main landscape tool for 4 or 5 years. Not great for astrophotography. I'd say the one Achilles heel of the SL2. I mean, all things being equal, just does not do great in low light or for astro. The SL2S just completely kicks its butt when it comes to astrophotography. That's the camera that Colin, our main instructor, uses, is an SL2S. That's his personal camera. If you can get your hands on the new SL3S, maybe even better, although they are very similar in terms of performance between the two for this application. The SL3 works as well. I mean, that's what I used last time around, but the people with the SL2Ss were having a much better time than I was.
Yeah, I guess you're going to take the SL3, or someone will take the SL3S to Moab and see how that performs.
I'll probably take the SL3S.
Cool. Next.
Okay. Okay, what was okay, if available light is not a factor, what would go into your decision to use a Summicron or Summilux lens? Bokeh, sharpness, are there any differences?
Yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, my first reaction is it depends, but it does depend, right? So, as David very eloquently put, low light or available light is really not as much of a decision-making factor in what lens we're choosing now as it used to be. I'm always choosing for look first. That's it. Whether I want a vintage look, wide angle look, compressed telephoto look, modern super sharp Appo look, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's what's driving me, because ultimately, if I'm making pictures, I want to have good pictures. I mean, I don't always get them, but I try to have them. So the gear decisions I'm making are based on the results I hope to get. And that's going to be a combination of a million factors, but certainly the look is going to be one of the biggest ones. So sometimes I choose a Summilux and shoot wide open all the time. If I'm going to do landscape, I may bring an Appo Summicron because I don't need to shoot at 1.4.
Now, we actually discussed this just to kind of go into a little bit how the sausage is made. We actually discussed maybe doing a comparison between Summilux and Summicron. And I'm curious.
Oh, they'll say yes to anything. Come on.
Is that something that's actually interesting to those out there in the YouTubes?
Well, we would definitely need to have some guardrails to make sure that it makes sense. Yeah. But I do want to do more sort of comparison episodes, but we need to have like a container to put it in. So I'm interested in anyone's ideas, but let's not have everybody a free-for-all any more so than it already is. So we have so many questions to answer.
Version 1, 35 Summilux.
Seriously, don't even get me
35
started.
Appo Summicron.
Okay, Jose, what's next?
Can you compare the Summilux 50? No, I'm kidding.
No, please no. Please no.
All right, let's see. Which of the following three has better micro capabilities? The Leica Qs, the Appo, the 30. Oh, well, I guess
the Q28,
the 28, the Appo Summicron M35 or the Micro Elmar 90 F4.
Oh, I can answer that. Number one, we have a very deep dive episode on macro called the macro episode, which you should watch. What I'll say is the 90 macro is only a macro with the macro adapter. But with that adapter, it is by far the best option when it comes to performance and flexibility.
We showed real pictures of that.
Yes. The next contender there would probably be the 35 Appo M, even though it doesn't focus quite as close as the Q3 does, or the Q28 does. The fact that it's a bit longer focal length just is more pleasing. We're talking about at the closest range. Or the Q343. Thank you.
Yep.
Q328 would be last on that list just because it's the widest lens. I'd say the same thing if I was using a 28 lux with an L Pro or whatever, because longer lenses traditionally are more pleasing for macro. But of course, there's no rules. Photography is, individual expression. So I've seen David do amazing things with the Q28 at minimum distance. So a lot of it is going to depend on your creative objectives. But just putting in that sort of container of those three lenses, which is best suited for macro, I would say the 90 macro with a combination of either the macro adapter and or the L Pro will be the best overall for shooting close up.
It's also one that we saw the least degradation when we used all of the things with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you haven't seen the episode, watch the episode. We basically did live test shooting with trying the most ridiculous combinations imaginable.
Yeah, that's worth a watch. Yeah. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Let's see. Do you see in-body image stabilization coming to Leica M-bodies in the future?
No.
I mean, we don't know.
I'm going to say no. If you've ever seen a cutaway of an M11, there's basically there's no like you probably couldn't even fit a toothpick up in there. It's this open space inside. Everything is so jammed up in there in terms of the sensor, the readout board, the cooling plate, the battery, the electronics. There's just no actual space for it to have a movable sensor inside. And then you can't go forward because you need to maintain the flange distance. So the only way to accomplish that would be to make a thicker body like the M240. And we've been there, we've done that, and everybody wanted the M10 back. So
there we go.
My answer, I know we don't like to speculate, but I'm going to say from an engineering perspective, I don't think it's possible.
Next question before we get in trouble.
All right. I'm working up the courage to enter the M world. What's your suggestion for getting started? Do older used ones have a maintenance history? Is this a concern?
Josh, you want to take that?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of ways to answer this, but honestly, number one is going to come down to your budget, right? Because if you tell me you have $2,000 to spend, $5,000 to spend, or $10,000 to spend US dollars, my answer is going to be different. But if we want to find like a sweet middle ground where maybe you spend the least to get the most performance, I would say an M10 is a really, really good deal, although they've gone up in price over the last year. So whatever, an M10 with like a 35 Summicron not pre-spheric, a 35 Summicron, a spheric version 1.
Yep.
So basically product code 20000 and product code 11879. Together, you're probably going to spend about $6,000 to $7,000-ish, but those are pretty solid on the market right now. Make sure the 35 to 6-bit coded. I think that's a very safe bet. But I would really need a lot more context to give you an answer that's exactly right for whoever's asking this question. But I think
because I would say the experience of using an M10 and an M11 are so close.
Yeah.
You've got the same updated viewfinder. You've got that same body. You have the same control layout.
And I think
a couple exceptions.
Just to hop on what you just said, that's really important, right? The viewfinder on the M8, M9, and M240 was always 0.68 magnification. When they switched to the M10, they went to 0.73. They made it 50% or 30% larger with 50% more eye relief. So even if you factor out every other feature change, everything, and just focus, no pun intended, on the rangefinder itself and the rangefinder experience, the M10 is superior to the predecessor. So that's one good reason to go for that.
Yeah. And if you can swing it, I mean, vanilla M10 is great, but if you can swing it, an M10P is just like...
Yeah, M10Ps are not a huge premium, but you do get the touchscreen, the virtual horizon, the quieter shutter, which is awesome. And of course, I like the aesthetics without the red dot as well.
Yeah. That's a sweet setup. If you were going to get started, if you can find a good condition M10P, and I agree with Josh, a 35 Cron, but like modern, but not the most modern, is going to be a nice sweet spot.
Yeah. I want to interrupt because there was a question that I thought was really funny.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about watches. So if you know, we have an episode on the Leica watches, and David and I and Jose, the three of us are all big watch nerds. If you've ever talked to me in the Leica store, we're all watch nerds. So somebody asked, why don't we wear the Leica watches? Well, the number one reason is they're really hard to get. And I would feel bad enough wearing one just because they're so nice and I don't want to smash it on the table, but also I don't want to take one away from a customer. Now, functionally, personally, I'm a chronograph guy, although I'm not wearing one today. I've been begging Leica to make a chronograph for years, so let's hope they do it. Well, the Leica watches have been a fascinating thing to watch as a store from the store level because they started with the very basic L1, L2, then called the ZM1 and ZM2, and they've expanded the line dramatically in a very short period of time, which is highly unusual for a non-watchmaker to become a watchmaker and then immediately just have a comprehensive lineup. We just had the ZM12s launch, which are a new 39mm size, which are stunning. I've seen them in person. We will do a show on them at some point. But the dials are beautiful. I love the layout. I love this dial symmetry now that there's no more date window. So
there you go.
Yeah. Now, if you want to go to the computer screen. Yeah. So this is the new ZM12, so which I like. That watches, I have really big wrists, so I go 40 and up. 39 is a little small for me. But fascinatingly, the pre-owned market for watches in general on the world is huge. Billions of dollars a year change hands in pre-owned watches. But pre-owned Leica watches are very rare. In fact, we've yet to actually take one on trade-in until now. And so I thought this was a fascinating opportunity where everything kind of tied together. I really wanted to wear it for the show, but this watch has never been worn. So I didn't want to tell you, look at this unworn watch as I'm wearing it on my wrist. So I was really excited to get the opportunity to purchase a Leica watch to then offer as pre-owned. I think there's a lot of people out there who probably like the designs. Maybe their budget's a little bit lower. This, I think it fits the sweet spot really well. So it doesn't come in this case. This is actually my case. You can't have it. But inside my beautiful little case, we have what I think is one of the coolest of all the Leica watches, and certainly one of the rarest, is, can we get that? Let's see.
Move that lens forward.
There we go. This is the Leica ZM2 Monochrome. This watch.
Can you say that in the international parlance?
What, the ZM2 Monochrome?
Yes,
Yeah, or ZM2 or ZM2 if you don't live in America. This is their watch that has a GMT function. So you've got the outer track here. We did a whole episode on the watches, so I won't rehash it now. Of course, the back is really the best part. So this is the first time we've ever had the chance to offer a pre-owned Leica watch for sale. This one is unworn. You can see the strap is still brand new. It's got, box of papers, all that stuff that you would expect with a watch like that. Comes with an extra strap, the one with the red backing, so you can choose which one you want. And this is, I think, the coolest of all the ZM1 and 2s, maybe not excluding the gold one, which kind of only made 50, so it came and went. But I absolutely love the design of the ZM2 Monochrome. I think visually it's just super, super cool with the black PVD on the stainless steel. The way the red dot on the push crown just pops out like that. This is absolutely gorgeous. So if you want to wear your Leica love on your wrist, for lack of a better descriptor, I think this is a great opportunity both to have a very unique Leica watch, a watch that we don't have in stock new, and I don't know if anybody does right now, but to get one pre-owned, but still that's been unworn. So you get to be the first person to ding it up, which is exactly why I didn't wear it on the show. Because I sure was tempted because it's really nice, but maybe later. Maybe if somebody buys it and then lets me wear it for a few episodes and then takes delivery, okay, fine, then I'll wear it. But
here, I'll drop this in the...
Yeah, we have it on the site. We don't have the photos yet, but I wrote up a little thing about it.
I sent it in the chat.
Oh, you did? Thanks,
Okay.
Jose.
Great.
I've been staring at it a lot lately. It's just like, it's
It is very nice.
It's super, super nice. So I just thought it was cool. I like to feature, cool things that we come across, and I think this is something different than what we usually see. We also showed 2 cool vintage lenses. A little bit earlier, we have a 50 Summicron rigid, version 1, which is really nice, and also that beautiful Summicron with the goggles and the original box as well. So Jose, if you feel bored, you can drop those in the chat whenever you want. Unfortunately, if you watched our last episode, we sold out of those black paint M3 keychains before the show ended.
Which is insane.
It was wild. We had 100 available for sale. Well, 99 because I took one of them, as I said on the show. But that was incredible. I mean, I'm grateful for everybody who got one. If you didn't get one, I will send you for a certain amount of money the addresses of everyone who did, so you can steal theirs. So totally fine. But thank you for that. We do appreciate the support and hope everyone who got their chance to have one enjoys it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was the cool thing I wanted to show. Now, on to 10,000 more questions.
Well, let's take a quick break.
Oh, there's one of the housekeeping things, yes.
A little bit. If you're just joining us or you've been with us, again, subscribe. You need to subscribe to Red Dot Forum so you can see more of this stuff. We have lots and lots and lots more videos. We have 5 years of archives that you can check out on our channel, and all those episodes are available for your viewing pleasure at any time. Also, I did show some pictures from Bhutan, and Josh mentioned the workshops are a great way to get out there in the world and get some real-world photography experience where we're with you and give you tips, advice, suggestions, and great company and conversation. So we do have a few spots in some of our upcoming trips that I did want to highlight.
I want to go. The heck?
Yeah. Okay. So let's go to the computer. So these are on Leica Store Miami under our destination workshops. And we do have, looks like, a spot left for our Death Valley photo adventure, which is going to be coming up. That's actually the end of this month, leading into early April. And Colin's going to be leading that. Looks amazing. We also have, although I thought that was full, but I might be wrong. We also have in June, going far afield, like similar to Bhutan, Peter is going to be going to Mongolia for a photo adventure, a long photo adventure. That's actually a 12-day trip in Mongolia in middle to end of June. And then for the astrophotography, we actually got a question from someone coming on that trip with us. So we're doing Moab in middle of September. in 2025 out in Utah. And that is phenomenal. I will be doing that trip with Colin. And you could just see, like, as an example, that is the kind of photo that you're going to shoot.
Sweet.
And that is not composited. I just want to make this clear. What we teach...
No, it's AI, right? It's not composited. It's
totally AI.
It's totally fake, yeah.
So just what I want to express is, so this is more of a workshop than we typically do, where a photo adventure is really about, you know, the place, the people, and having a great time, also getting amazing pictures, but we're not sticking in a classroom. With the astrophotography, we have the benefit that it happens at night, which means we have all day. And it's too hot during the day to go outside of Moab. So we do go on some reconnaissance trips to pre-scout locations, but we also have time to be in a nice air conditioning. And Colin actually gives a few different classroom sessions. So prior to actually shooting anything, talking about doing the pre-planning, using some of the augmented reality tools to plan for this, and then actually going and doing it, and then an entire session just on editing to get the most out of it. But creating shots like this, and it is creating, this is not composited in the computer, this is captured in camera. This is one image. And that's really what we're trying to teach on how you can elevate your photography to get these kind of images. And yes, we are also outside and still shoot some pretty desert scenes in Moab and all that. It's a phenomenal place. Stay in the nicest hotel in Moab. We have great meals, great camaraderie, and yeah, it's an awesome trip. So I hope you guys will choose to join us. We have a couple spots left there.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to our new friend Jonathan from New Hampshire, who I just saw, I think, signed up for Moab.
Perfect.
And asked us a great question that I think we should address about the lens that's sitting right there, which is one he recently picked up at the Leica store last week. Now, I know you all want us to do an R lens episode.
There it is.
I think if you just cut up all the little times we talked about R lenses from all of the 80 episodes, maybe you can make one full R lens episode. But Jonathan asked about if you can have a tripod collar on this lens, because if you mount this lens on the R adapter M or the R adapter L, you can use the tripod foot on those adapters. But if you want to have it push a little bit further forward, well, I don't have the foot on there.
Oh, right.
Anyway, you can use the Leica STA-1 tripod adapter if you can find one. It was made to work with the 100 Appo Macro R and the 180 Appo Elmarit R. So they're out there. They're a couple $100, sometimes a little less. I've seen one or two through the shop pre-owned. But if you do have one of these lenses and you want to get a super cool, obscure accessory to put it on a tripod, that is what you need. Anyway.
Cool.
Jose, what else we got?
Many questions.
Many?
Many.
So we're done, basically.
So we're
All right.
Perfect.
What do we got? Okay, let's do it.
I lost my front thread cover ring for the 35mm FLE. How does one purchase a spare part?
You go on our website and you pre-order it. They're perpetually out of stock only because by the time we get some, they're always pre-sold. We can never get enough. Just search FLE ring on our website. I'm pretty sure. Jose, you can drop it in the chat.
Yeah, just to make sure, is this for both versions or?
Well, only the FLE 1 has a ring. The FLE 2 has a built-in
That's just
shade,
for the
so
version
there's no
one,
ring.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just to clarify that. If you just say, "Oh, I'll just wait and I'll check to see when it's available,"
It's never going to be in stock. Yeah.
understand that as soon as they come in, they go out to people that already placed pre-orders.
Yeah, so we're just we can never get enough. So sorry about that.
And
But if you
that's-
pre-order one, we'll get you one.
And that's not specific to the replacement screw-on finishing ring. That's all replacement parts. Your best bet is to place a pre-order. At least at our store, we don't even take any kind of payment information. You just enter the order and it saves your place in line. We then contact you when it comes in and say, "Hey, do you still want it? We'll send you an invoice." And then you pay at that point. So it costs nothing, but it lets us know that you want it. And when it comes in, we can give it to you.
Oh, sell it to you.
Yeah, sell it to you.
The only thing I'm going to give you is a hard time, but you can, that's right. Okay, next.
Okay.
All right. Is it possible to send a Q2 or Q3 back to Leica to have the Leica script engraved on the top plate?
No. I mean, is it possible? Maybe. Can you actually do it? Will Leica do that for you? I doubt it. And do you want them to? Because what happens when you want to trade that one in? It's got your name on it. I ain't taking that in. Unless your name is like Leica. Maybe. Otherwise, or Q. If your nickname is Q2, all your friends call you a Q2, so you have that engraved. But
Wow.
I would say if you want to make your camera yours, use it so it's all beat up and make it look cool, or put a cool strap on it. But engraving is risky just because what if you don't want it anymore, you know?
True.
Unless, or you're super famous.
True.
If you're super
I guess
famous.
you could just put Brad Pitt's name on there.
Well, it's like, think about like an authentic Paul Newman Daytona, Rolex Daytona, right? That had the one that his wife engraved for him. That made it worth more.
Right. So if you engrave Paul Newman's name on your Q2, it'll be worth $17 million. Life advice from the Leica experts.
That's my advice.
All right. What else? What else?
All right. On the SO3, I now use the 24-70 for everything. I don't notice much of a difference at 75 compared to the 75 SL Appo. What am I missing?
Well, 24-70 doesn't go to 75.
I don't know if you meant 24-90 or
Oh.
just at 70, but you know, at the longest.
I mean,
I can
you're okay. I'll give you the obvious one. You're missing f2,
Yeah.
because if you're using the 24-70, which is
I think it was
over there.
referring to when we were talking about them the prime SLs being the sharpest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when that came in. So
Okay.
Well, I'll answer this quickly, if I may.
Yeah. Go.
Ultimately, it comes down to what you're shooting and how are you testing it? Are you just shooting handheld? Are you wide open? Are you at a high ISO? I've tested these, and wide open, apples to apples, in a controlled environment, the 75 Summicron is considerably sharper wide open. I mean, especially in the corners. 24-90 is no slouch, but like I've said 1,000 times, the Appo SLs are king.
I mean, what I've always said, if you can rewind and watch the footage, but the 24-90, which is what I use most of the time, even though the Appo SLs exist, I primarily use the 24-90, the 24-90 zoom. This is mine, the one that has all the dings in it. Because at all the marked focal lengths, 24, 28, 35, 50, 75, and 90, this meets or beats just about every M lens in those focal lengths. Is it as good or as exceptional as the Appo SLs? Not quite, but it's awfully close. And especially if I'm shooting landscape and I'm already stopping down to 5.6 or f8,
Yeah.
the difference has become even less.
Yeah.
We
should go to the next question.
So basically, the SL zooms are stupidly good. They're just not as reference class as the SL Appo primes. How's that?
Next question. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. David, 18 versus 21 Super Elmar.
Ooh.
Even though you can't buy the 18 anymore, but
I actually have the 18. I didn't put it on the table. I have it in
But
my
that's
bag.
okay. You don't have to get it.
I love the 18. It was very sad that Leica stopped making the 18. I tried fruitlessly to convince them to start making the 18 again, and they were like, well, actually, they didn't say anything because they just completely ignored that request. I think it's awesome. If you can find an 18, it's such a good lens. I'm never parting with mine. The 21, I think, has an advantage that, one, it's readily available. It's in the current lineup. You can also use a filter on it if that is your preference. So if you are shooting black and white and you want to use color filters, you just use a standard E46 filter on the 21. The 18 filter situation is there. Just forget it. There is no filter situation.
I mean,
There was
You have to get the filter adapter, which is extremely hard to
so
find.
hard to get.
Yeah.
Like as hard as the 18 is to get,
Yeah, the filter adapter is even harder.
ridiculous. So, and then it's 77 and the thing's massive and it's not like shooting an M anymore.
Yeah.
So I think if you are planning on using filters either for polarization or color filters for black and white, the 21 makes more sense. If you really want the widest that Leica has in a prime lens, the 18, like if you can find an 18, you certainly won't lose money on an 18, like because they're not making any more of them and you'll enjoy it. Or for some people, they find it actually too wide. You have to have a strong foreground or a big enough image that it makes sense. And I'll use this as another example, right? I carry the 18 in my camera bag. Maybe it comes out for every 5 out of 100 shots. Like it just doesn't get the kind of use that a 35 or a 75 or a 90 are going to get, or a 28. Like it just sits there waiting, and when the opportunity strikes, it's like, oh, I'm so glad I had it. And even though I might only be using it 5% of the time, it might account for 25% of my favorite shots, right? So when it hits big, but it's kind of a long shot to get it. I don't know. That analogy fell apart, but
That's okay.
You get the idea.
Next question.
Okay, let's see.
Both are great lenses.
Cop out.
Accurate. I mean,
That's true, yeah.
Okay, is the new 72-200 SL lens a redo of the Sigma line? And if so, does Leica actually enhance the lens in any way?
Yeah.
before Josh answers that, because I'm gonna let his answer it, we have an entire episode on this lens. Now answer it.
Well, Leica, starting with the 24 to 70, I think,
Yes.
I think has been offering a different lineup of SL lenses that are not made at the factory in Germany. Some are China, some are Japan, some are Portugal. And they're working with a variety of partners. Leica does not publicly state who they're working with, so it's up to us to speculate. And I'm sure some of the mysteries are not that hard to solve. But the reality is, any lens that's branded Leica, like in the SL lineup, is a Leica lens. Whether or not it's manufactured in Germany, it's a Leica lens, which means it's meeting Leica's standards. It has Leica's Aquadura coatings, Leica's build quality, and it comes with a Leica warranty. So we don't know exactly who makes Leica's sensors. We don't know, like Leica doesn't make the actual glass in the lenses themselves. I mean, they rely on a global network of partners and suppliers to allow them to offer a vast and functional and competitive product lineup in a modern era with millions of options. So for me, I ask myself, does it get me the results that I need for my shots? Yes or no? And if it does, I'm going to get it. And if it doesn't, I'm going to get something else. So I would encourage you to watch our episode on the 7200 because that'll be a lot more insightful, I think, to that question.
Sure.
Next.
Okay. Let's see. Next. Using an SL2S with the Summilux R80 millimeters, why won't the camera shoot at any shutter speed over 1/8000 of a second?
You have the shutter type set to mechanical only, maybe?
A very random question.
Super specific.
I mean, if the camera doesn't care what lens you have attached, I mean, did you try like, first thing I would do, I mean, obviously,
Reset
check your firmware, reset the camera, and also try it with or without a lens profile because you can disable the lens profile and see if that.
I can't think of a reason. I mean,
Yeah.
unless you have it to mechanical only and not hybrid.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that your shutter type says hybrid, which will allow it to go
Or
up
just
to,
put it on electronic and try to force it. I mean, this is like one of those situations where I kind of have like a variable reduction tree in my brain about the different things to try. Yeah. Feel free to reach out to me directly and we can work through that.
Yeah.
But short of having it in my hands or working through it, I don't think that makes sense. But
Yeah.
Who knows?
I can't think of a reason why.
yeah.
Okay. Are there any Leica communities to receive constructive criticism on my photos and how to continue improving? I think my photos are decent, but not sure what my level is.
I mean, I'll give you two suggestions. Well, I guess one is, where do you live? You don't have to answer that, but
Just call in, please. Let us
Call
know.
in.
We got the phone right here.
long time listener, first time caller. So some places have stronger local photography groups than other places. If you live in a big city, New York or Seattle or wherever, LA, you might have more luck finding a photo group in general or a Leica club more specifically. Like I know in Seattle, the Seattle Leica user group
Is it still around?
probably are certainly were very active and had meetups and things like that. I know there was a group in Washington, D.C. that was using the Leica store in D.C.
What I'll say,
to
just
meet.
to cut you off for a second here.
That's
well,
one.
you know what I'm going to say, right? There's LSI.
I was going to give that a second.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, number two.
Yeah, right.
Number two is LSI, the Leica Society International, where there is now 3 meetings a year, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, they do this 2 spring shoots, one in the U.S. and one, and then the
right.
annual meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's 3 opportunities per year to get together, and they might also organize local meetups for people informally. If there's enough of those members in a particular area and they want to get together for coffee and photography, great. That's an opportunity, and there's fantastic speakers that come in, professional photographers, legends, etc. Third, workshops.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Hang out with this guy.
Well,
and
not just me.
hang out with this guy, and just wherever he puts his tripod, you put your tripod there. I mean, you do a good job. But you're missing another one.
What?
Which is we offer one-on-one image review and portfolio critiques through our Lightroom photography trainer, John Latimer.
There you go.
Which you can sign up on our website. So John has been critiquing images for decades and has extremely, extremely good eye. And he's also looked at a lot of Leica photography because he works with a lot of our customers.
Sure.
So if you want a one-on-one critique from a professional, sign up for an hour or more with John, which you can do on our website. I would say definitely go on a workshop because I've seen the instructions that you give, that Peter gives, that Colin gives is fantastic. And also it is a great chance to share your work. But definitely...
I was going from easiest to
okay. You need to have a thick skin for sure if you actually want to improve your photography. As somebody who went to photography school and has sat through countless brutal critiques from his professors and his peers, if you actually want your pictures to get better, don't take it personally. No. If all you want to do is show off your photography, which is totally fine, then you have to have a different approach to how you're sharing your images, because photography is supposed to be fun, but there are aspects to it where you can say, review this image, give me feedback, and use that feedback to improve. Just don't take it personally. Unless you're talking to me, I will personally insult. No, I'm just kidding. I think that's a cool question because it shows you do want to grow, which I'm grateful for.
Okay.
Also, LSI is a great...
You did say
We did. I said that was number 2.
I mean, no, sorry, no, LFI.
Oh, LFI.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, the magazine, yeah. It's like, submit photos, see other people's work. It's,
And there's also a bunch of
selected.
online active Facebook groups, like the Leica Meet online has, I think, 100,000 members. So, but it's more of the just share your work, not necessarily. And most people are like, hey, that's great, thumbs up. They're not going to be like,
it's not super
this is terrible. It would be so much better if the camera was moved down here and you were a step back.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
Next question.
But it's a good place to share.
Okay, how can we tell I'm using the polarizer correctly on an analog M? Trial and error?
So the Leica Universal Polarizer, catalog number 13356 is what you need. And what that is it goes over the lens and it flips the polarizer out exactly 180 degrees over the rangefinder window. Because, of course, when you're flipping it 180 degrees, the polarization effect is identical. So you would flip it over, adjust it to where it looks the way you want in the rangefinder window, and you flip it back. It's a little bit clunky, but it actually works extremely well if your goal is to polarize and you don't have a live view camera. Easy as that.
Okay. Josh.
Yes.
How do I get an estimate from Leica to replace a scuff rear screen on my M10 Monochrome, please?
You send it to customer care, you fill out a repair form, they send you an estimate over email. Easy. The repair form is on their website. You can also email us and I can send it to you. It's not hard.
Yep. All right. Is the M9 Monochrome worth getting above the M246 Monochrome in 2025?
I mean,
Fighting words over there.
I'll let Josh weigh in on it, but I'll
let's see what you have
say,
to say, yeah.
I'll say no. Nostalgia is great and all, but man, the 246 was such a big bump in terms of performance and modernity. Yeah, I think at M246, and then again another big jump to the M10 monochrome. But if you're more, if that's in your budget range, the 246 I think is a great place to start. I personally avoid the M9 monochrome as some place to start. I think it's cool for someone who knows what they're getting into and really wants kind of that nostalgia walk down memory lane. What do you think?
I mean, I agree. The reality is that the M9 monochrome is disproportionately expensive in today's market, assuming it has a replaced CCD sensor, simply by virtue of the fact that they're not making those sensors anymore. So it is sort of frozen in time. You're going to spend more money buying an M9 monochrome, like apples to apples, like mint condition, fully complete, recently serviced M9 monochrome could be $4,000 to $5,000 with a low shutter count. Whereas a 246 monochrome, I just sold a beautiful one for like $3,700. So,
nice.
I agree with you. I think you've well said, and I think we should move on.
Okay.
Okay. Excellent. Will we see the 24 millimeter coming back?
David's reaction says it all. I doubt it. I think, yes, but wait a minute. We have 14 to 24. That has 24. 24 to 70. 24 to 90. 16 to 35. All those have 24 in them.
I know, they really do.
So you know what? You have 4 different lenses you can get 24 at.
None of those attached to M body.
You haven't tried. Little duct tape. Little super glue.
Yeah.
It's a sore subject. But.
It is an extremely sore subject and one that I take very personally because I love 24.
So we don't know to actually answer that question, honestly. We have no idea. But it's unlikely they bring that focal length back.
Which we don't understand. But moving on.
Moving on.
All right. Okay. All right. Are there any small flashes you guys would recommend for the M11? The Leica ones strike me as dated.
I don't know the answer to that question. Only because we only sell Leica stuff, so we don't sell third-party flashes.
And you know the amount of times that I've used a flash.
Oh yeah,
on
I know.
camera?
Don't say that though, because there are some people who do use flash. So
I'm just saying.
I would ask the chat.
Personally-
I'm asking you guys if anybody in the chat can recommend a flash that works well with an M that's small. I'm open to hearing about it,
Yeah.
because I don't know.
Yeah, lately, like Godox, these brands have been also releasing different flashes and triggers for Leica. But at the end of the day, sometimes with any flash that you can use on manual can work. Now, TTL and auto is a different story, but for any of these cameras, you can use a third-party flash that's smaller and it'll work on manual. So you have to control the power, but I wouldn't recommend like a specific one, but I know that there are a bunch of out there.
It's a good question. Like I said, if anyone in the chat wants to contribute, please.
Otherwise, use an SF40.
There you go. Moving on.
All right. What lenses do you suggest for the Moab Astro photography trip?
Wow, we're coming back to that again.
All right, let's do
Wide and fast is usually what we recommend. If you're sticking in specifically in the Leicaverse, the 14 to 24 worked well for me. The 21 Super Appo is also really nice. It's not super wide, but for a shot like I showed with the arch, actually that works well with the 21. So some shots work well with 21, others are more like 14, 16 millimeter. And in the non-Leica native, the Astro lens that we often recommend is the Sigma Art 14 millimeter 1.4. The thing, I mean, it's like twice the size of all the lenses on this table combined. No,
exaggerating.
It is about that big around. It is a massive chunker of a lens. You do need to use the tripod foot. It's such a big lens. And I can say this after our last trip, and I did use that lens. I mean, you feel it when you're hiking like a mile and a half to the location, and it's like, wow, that lens is really heavy. So it's just something to consider. Leica doesn't have a viable alternative. Listen, if they had a 14 f2, I'd recommend that. But for right now, the Sigma 14 1.4 is the way to go. I would stay away from the older 14 1.8 Sigma because kind of a dog. Just not very sharp, not great.
Yeah.
So don't think like, oh, I can save size by getting the 1.8 and it's not that much slower. Much, much worse.
Yeah.
The 1.4 is good. I personally stop it down to f2. Colin shoots it wide open, but everyone has their own personal quality limits.
And also, if you had Chonker on David's bingo card tonight, you can cross that off. We got plasma, we got hydrophobic. We're just killing it.
Oh, and modernity.
That one too. Yeah, there's that one. Goodness. All right, what's next?
All right. Can you please refresh me on what focal lengths work best or are needed with the Visoflex 2 for M11?
That's a good question. So I'll take this if you don't
Sure,
mind.
go.
There's kind of two schools of thought when it comes to using the Visoflex 2 on the M11. One is you simply want to have the most accurate focus possible, or if you're framing for a lens that's wider than 28. I personally like the Visoflex 2 more often with lenses that have a lot more character, Noctilux, vintage glass, things like that, because it allows me to use the lens's character and performance in real time to compose and create my images. Because when you're looking through the rangefinder window, of course, you're not looking through the lens. That aside, I think in the current lineup, a lot of that's going to come down to your skill level with a rangefinder. My eyesight is terrible, even with glasses, so I lean on the Visoflex quite often for the longer stuff, 75, 90, 135. It's rare that I would use a Visoflex 2, and I think you would say the same for anything between 28 and 50.
I'm a big Visoflex guy.
But I always have one in the bag when I bring it out with me, always.
So I would say, for me personally, it's not about focus because I actually do know how to focus with a rangefinder. I shot with film
You do?
rangefinders. I do.
Wait, did you make a video about that?
I even made a video
Wow.
about it. For me, the reason is one that you stated, which is accuracy. I am such a stickler for composing in camera, corner to corner, all the way to the edge. I don't like to crop after the fact, and I just like to get it as perfect as possible. I like to line up straight lines, corners, etc. So having the Visoflex really is a winner for me. The other thing that I found, and I'll give a little use case here, if I can find a M body.
My good sir.
Something that I also appreciate when I'm in a, let's say, a more sensitive environment where people might not want to have a camera put in their face.
doing over there?
I'm doing great. All right.
Multitasking.
Instead of this, right, where I'm very actively taking pictures of somebody, I can be down looking in the Visoflex, and it's down here, which does two things. One, pictures are generally better lower. And if you're going to shoot here, you kind of have to bend over at the waist or bend your knees down, which, that gets harder with age. The nice thing is about with the Visoflex is you're typically leaning down and looking at it at chest level, which is more appealing, especially when you're shooting other people, because if the lens is at chest level versus eye level, it's just better. And if I'm wearing a baseball cap and I have a brim, that covers, and you barely see the lens sticking out the bottom, like here. So I find the Visoflex to be very discreet in an urban environment when I'm doing street photography. And then for everything else, I just prefer the accuracy of it. And the Visoflex 2 is such a big upgrade over the Visoflex 020. And also the responsiveness of the M11 versus the M10. It's very, very usable now.
There you go. Well said. What's next?
All right. Let's see. I'm thinking of grabbing a 135 millimeter for the M11. No, you guys didn't seem too impressed with the Elmer 2.8 during the Tele episode, but looks and heft aside, how does it perform?
Yeah, the 135 came in 3 versions, the Elmer with goggles. I mean, it's not that sharp and low contrast, but it is fun. It gives you a vintage rendering. You almost certainly need to use it with the Visoflex 2 to get the most accurate rendering. I mean, they're good deals. Most of them are, I think, under $1,000 at this point, even with a CLA. So if you're looking for a fun rangefinder coupled telephoto lens and don't want to spend $3,000 or $4,000, yeah, I think that's your best bet. The short answer on that one.
Okay.
I would also encourage the current 135.
Well, it's not current anymore.
Well,
I'm just saying, if they don't want to spend $3,000 or $4,000 is what I said.
Yeah, I got you.
Next question.
I have another question. I have a follow-up to this.
Okay, what you got?
Would it be better
Yes, the answer
for
is
them
yes.
to get a 135, let's say 135 f4?
What, an R lens?
Yeah.
Well, that's a 2.8.
Well, did it only come in 2.8?
They made the F. Yeah, so
Yeah, okay.
I would say, that's why I qualified it by saying if you want a rangefinder coupled lens.
Okay.
That's what because otherwise you could get a million different things. But the 135s came in a couple of different flavors. If you want rangefinder coupled, 135 is as long as you can go. If you are willing to use live view only, then yeah, you could do.
Do you think the quality is better on one of the 135 R lenses than it was on that 135 Elmer?
Yeah, the 135 R lenses are newer. I haven't tested them side by side, but my gut, just from past experience, would tell me that a 135 R lens would perform better than the early 135 M lenses.
Yeah.
We got a super chat.
Yay.
I'll read it and you answer it.
Okay.
David, if you had to pick one, Q3 or the SL2 for events, portraits, and travel, ? I'm leaning towards the Q3. I feel like it could be my all-in-one solution for the 3 genres that I shoot. What are your thoughts?
As long as you are happy with one focal length, yes.
There you go.
But prices of SL2s right now, I mean, SL2s are like bargain.
Yeah, they're $2,500 or give or take for an SL2. I think you could get a Q2 and an SL2 for the same price as a Q3, right? If I'm doing the math.
Well, you need a lens for the SL2.
Okay. Well, let's see.
say-
So we use Q2 as $3,500, give or take. I use SL2 as $2,500, so that's $6,000.
Yeah.
You can get a 35 non-Appo SL for like $1,500 on the used market. So we're at $7,500. So it's a little bit more than a Q3, but now you have both.
Wow.
So that's probably what I would do to give yourself the compact, lightweight, fast Q2, easy to travel with, and then SL2, which you could, of course, expand infinitely into the future.
But I would say that for low light, if you are looking at low light ability, the Q3 with the 60 megapixel BSI sensor will outperform the 47 megapixel sensor in the SL2.
But he put portraits on there, and Q3 for portraits
It's not as
is
good.
not as ideal if you're doing like headshots and things, but that's good.
But yeah, Q3 can certainly be, as I showed, Q3 can be jack of all trades, especially the combination.
Yeah.
If you're up for that.
Next.
Cool. Let's see. Okay. I recently bought the new M11 glossy black paint and want to now pick up a lens painted in glossy black to match. Currently have a Summilux 50mm close focus lens. Do you think buying the new glossy Noctilux 51.2 would be a good combo, or should I consider something else?
Okay, so there's 2 ways to look at this. If you simply want a lens that matches perfectly, then yeah, the glossy black Noctilux was introduced at the same time as the glossy M11. It is a different material. The glossy M11 is brass. The glossy Noctilux is aluminum. But the finish is, for all intents and purposes, identical. However, that's also a lens that has a very distinct rendering and performance or lack thereof. So if you're used to the high performance of the 50 Summilux that you have, you may be disappointed in the 1.2 Noctilux. So if you actually plan on using it, unfortunately, that's probably not the best option if performance is what you're looking for. If the Noctilux look is what you're looking for, then yeah, that 1.2 Noctilux is awesome. We have a whole episode on Noctiluxes where we talk about it. Otherwise, you have to then look into the back catalog of black paint lenses, and now we're talking basically 5 figures and very hard to find. So
About a 50 Summilux pre-aspheric glossy black.
10 grand if you can find one,
Really?
or
Wow.
more. Yeah. So they're,
I think that would look sick.
you know, black paint has exploded over the last 4 or 5 years in terms of price. So yeah, I mean, a black paint 50 Summilux aspheric, which is an LHSA lens, you're talking $20,000.
I was talking the pre-aspheric.
But the pre-aspheric black paint, which was kind of like the Millennium sort of side of
exactly.
things, is, you know, $10,000. So they're out there. They're gorgeous. And if you have the patience and the budget, yeah, they're awesome. And not that the Noctilux is inexpensive, but you can get one new, so you don't have to go scour the pre-owned market for one.
True,
Yeah.
true.
Interesting question, though.
Yeah, that's right up your alley.
That's true. I could have a whole episode just on that question, I think, but we have more things to do. So.
Yes. What do we got?
Okay. Next one is, all right. Your experience, do you find that Leica enthusiasts also shoot Hasselblad? Why or why not?
I think Leica enthusiasts shoot a lot of things.
What a politically correct answer.
No, I have
A lot
had
of things, yeah. A lot of things, a lot of good things, a lot of great things.
Different camera brands.
A lot of
you
other
mean.
brands,
a lot of other brands.
a lot of cameras. Come on. Yeah.
So I think that as time has gone on and Leica has fleshed out this insane lineup, you know, now we have very capable all-in-one Qs, we have SL, you know, Pro mirrorless, we've got Ms. I think the reasons are less and less that people need to shoot outside of the system. I mean, we're obviously a little biased here because we're, you know, purists, but yeah, I have seen, especially on my workshops, I've had a few people come with Hasselblads, usually, you know, like X2Ds. I actually did on our last Moab trip. I can't remember the model of it, but it's like a Hasselblad digital that looks like a V series, like an SWC.
Yeah, those are cool.
A 9 something. It's digital. There's no viewfinder. It's just like you look on the screen and you hope for the best. And it's cool. Like I think the aesthetic is really neat. I was a little concerned about the desert environment being the right place for that, but you know, again, it's I think, and we've said this before, we live in an amazing time to be a photographer because
So politically correct.
so politically correct.
What I'll say is this. I hope the other brands continue to get better because somebody has to put some pressure on Leica to keep getting better too. So, yeah. Next question.
All right. I recently saw an article.
907X, there you go.
Recently saw an article in which someone said you can get more accurate focusing when using an M's viewfinder by turning the camera 45 degrees to focus and then composing. Is that a thing?
Not that I know of.
No. I mean, I'm sure it's a thing if the straight line objects are at a 45-degree angle.
Yeah.
Typically, the reason that the rangefinder is the way it is, and I go over this in my rangefinder focusing video, usually you're looking for a vertical line. There's a lot of vertical lines in the normal course of the world, whether that's an edge of a building, the side of someone's glasses, the nose, whatever. There is always a vertical line. In cases where there is not a vertical line, you can either shift and find a vertical line or turn the camera 90 degrees. I have heard of that, where everything is just a bunch of horizontal lines and then you need to find a horizontal line. I've actually never heard of anyone just turning it 45 degrees. That's a little strange.
Hey, if it works for you, then I'm all for it. But I don't think that's like a thing.
I don't think it's a thing.
And I don't know about it anyway.
Certainly not. Yeah.
Next question.
Okay. Could you demonstrate your preferred method of loading film in an M camera?
David would love to do that.
The right way.
Just a second part of the question. It says, lots of experts out there who say you barely need to touch the film, but I still always end up scooching the film up onto the sprockets.
Touching. I'm not
You
touching.
can touch the film.
Yeah.
I think I'll let David demonstrate this, but Don't overthink it. Just put the film in the camera.
All right, are we gonna do this?
Yeah.
Do
I
it.
have film. I have a film camera. You ready?
Let's do it.
What film camera is that?
This is an MA.
Cool.
This is an MA. This is an MA with film. There is no film in here, right?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
There shouldn't be, but
They're pricing.
Well, there isn't now.
There is, if there is, then
Oh,
no.
okay. So I'll do it this way. Yeah. Okay. So all modern Leicas have a handy dandy little chart for you to show you the proper way to load the film. So how do you load the film? Okay. Well, I got to do this upside down. This is going to be, or should I turn it this way? Yes. Actually, sorry. I will turn it this way so you can see what I'm seeing. We put the film canister in here. As you can see, I'm going to pull this across, and just like the picture shows, I'm going to try to thread just the end of the leader up into there. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. Just like that, okay? I don't know what the holding, I guess you can make sure that it's on the sprocket. Sometimes I do like to check that. But generally you wanna close the pressure plate and then advance the film, and you should see it catch and turn around, which it did right there. I'm gonna fire off a shot, and I'll burn a second one just to be on the safe side, but there you go. It is clearly wrapped around. At that point, I'm going to put my plate back on, like so. And you are good to go. And then when we advance the film, you'll also notice the two dots are going to spin as well. Right there, and we're just going to advance to number 1, and we're ready to shoot. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, these cameras have been around forever, and there's probably like 50,000 different ways to load it, and there's
But
probably...
I guess if you look at the way I did it all from the edge. I did not put my fingers actually on the film itself, if that answers your question.
Yeah.
You don't need to hold it in there. That's what the pressure plate's for. So I guess if there was no pressure plate, yes, you'd have to hold the film, but since there is a pressure plate,
There we go.
you should close it, advance it, and make sure that you visually see it wrapping around. Again, I like to do it twice to make sure that it doesn't catch and then slip. But if you follow the diagram and you just take your time, take a second, as we say, slow is fast, especially when you're loading film.
Cool.
And practice more.
Next question.
all right. Is the glossy black paint 50mm 1.2 Noctilux made of brass or aluminum? If
First
aluminum,
of all, I answered this question already. So.
yeah, I know. But if aluminum, it won't brass. It will rub off and show aluminum. There was a recent 35mm Summicron black paint aluminum. How did it wear?
So the Noctilux 1.2 Glossy is aluminum, which we say on our website, and we've said on the show before. There is precedent for aluminum black paint lenses. Most of the modern black paint lenses that Leica has done have been aluminum. That includes 35 Summicron that came with the Yormark, the Andy Summers, 35 Summilux, and 50 Noctilux from the 70th anniversary of Korea set, etc. How does it wear? Well, no one who owns any of those extremely expensive lenses has used them enough to actually see how they wear. So we don't really know. That's the honest truth. It's not going to show brass underneath. It'll probably show what the painted cameras show, which is like a darker metal underneath, like a dark gray. I don't really think that's as big of a deal as most people make it out to be, only because most of those lenses are just not used enough to get brassed. I think the camera body being brassed is more important because that tends to get used more. But what I'll say is if anybody in the chat owns a black painted aluminum lens and has used it enough to where the finish is wearing off, send me a photo so I can answer this question more definitively.
Once and for all.
Yeah, because it's a great question, but I just don't think they've been doing it long enough for them to have been used enough for us to really know how that's going to work.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
Next.
All right. Here we go. Using the R lenses for the M, I know they can be adapted, but read there are complications with focusing with the rangefinder on an M.
Well, okay. If you use an R lens using an R adapter M,
Right here.
right here, it's not rangefinder coupled whatsoever. So the complication is you can't use the rangefinder.
It don't be working.
It don't work. That being said, any camera from the M240 generation onward featured live view and allows you to use non-rangefinder coupled lenses in live view to focus. And they have a cool focus aid feature, which basically zooms into 100%, either automatically, which works sometimes, or you can use the little button On the camera, on the older cameras, it's on the front, and that will automatically magnify to 100% or whatever zoom level you set it to on the wheel. And you focus, half press the shutter, it jumps back for composition, and it works remarkably well. I actually use this 180 R lens quite a lot on my M240, as well as the 60 macro R lens. And even then, even on a 2012 camera, it worked really well. I think these days, yes, you can certainly use it on an M camera, but the live view experience, especially using, say, R lenses, might be better on a modern SL camera, let's say an either SL2, SL3 generation camera, because the EVF is a much higher resolution. The camera body itself is more substantial with the grip for holding a larger lens, for hand holding, and also the image stabilization is kind of a game changer for longer lenses.
Let me actually make that happen for you here. Where's your monochrome? Where did that go?
Monochrome's
Did
over
I
there.
eat it? Oh, here we go. So let's actually show you kind of like what a setup like that would look like with the 180R lens, because we have all the toys here.
Sure.
Let's see. 'Cause I think you have to use it with the grip personally.
The M with the grip.
Yeah, and then the Visoflex 2.
Yep. There you go. Hey, thanks.
There it
I
is.
didn't get you anything.
You got me dinner.
Hey, I did. Yeah. So you can do a little top down here. Yeah. So that's an attractive looking setup right there. But yeah, for sure, the grip makes it where you can actually hold this, and you do get the benefit of the EVF, and it's pretty nice. So I've got no problems with this, but I would say now we need two adapters.
What else do you want?
I need this one. This is one option if you want to stack adapters, which I don't know if that question ever came up, but yeah, you can stack.
We talked about it, but
Yeah, you can stack adapters, or there is a specific single adapter. And that, it's just, I don't know. For me, it's just a little more comfortable, but certainly the M with the grip kind of gets you most of the way there with this, but not quite. That's just such a substantial, and go to the wider shot so you can see. This is just a much more substantial purchase that you have on the camera, and it's just more natural to focus an
looks good on
SLR
there.
style.
Looks good on there.
Yeah, it looks really good on there. Yeah.
And I will be selling this lens right here on the
Nope.
high speed. David's baby.
This is my personal lens.
Okay, somebody's asking about Deluxe 8 availability. What market are you in? Because in the US,
They're
we've been
widely
getting
available. Yeah.
solid deliveries. You know, we sell out, we get more, we sell out. But we've had them in the stock where you could walk in and buy one for a bit. So, yeah, maybe you're in like some weird market somewhere. But anyway, Jose, we got time. We got time. We're doing all right.
A few minutes.
Yeah.
We're knocking out a lot of questions.
Keep them coming. Keep them coming.
Okay. My walk-around kit involves the M11D with 50 Appo, 35 Appo, 21 Super Elmer, 75 Noctilux. Considering some fast lenses to pair with the 75 Noctilux for nighttime. Recommendations?
Noctilux 0.95. And what else did he have? 50 Appo or she?
50 Appo, 35 Appo, 21 Super Elmer.
28 Summilux
28 Summilux, 50 Noctilux 0.95.
would
Yeah,
be
pretty
pretty
sweet.
solid.
Yeah, that'd be a really, really cool kit.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
Next.
Okay. Am I crazy to be eyeing an S3 in 2025? I have an SL3, M10 Monochrome, M10P, and thought I might round out my collection for landscapes without being too clinical. Or even an S007.
Ooh, a loaded question.
I mean, okay, that last part is interesting. I mean, first, I get like an allergic reaction when I hear the word clinical. I understand what you're getting at. You know, one person's clinical is my perfect. You know, it's like everybody wants perfect, and they're like, oh, it's too clinical. The SL lenses, or just, I mean, you already have an SL system. You kind of know the drill there, but I was an S shooter for about 10 years, and then ultimately switched over from the SL2 and the SL3 for my landscape photography. I still look back at images that I took with the S system, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was pretty nice. The camera itself, maybe not as advanced as an SL, but what was really nice about the lenses, and I'm going to focus on the lenses blend that optical excellence and next level image quality with of the SL lenses with the character of M lenses. And I actually have an entire article about that with a guide to S lenses where you can actually see samples from every single S lens they make that I shot over the years. And they really, I mean, they're gorgeous lenses. I would say they're gorgeous lenses, universally so. Not super fast because they are medium format. So a super fast lens there. The fastest one they make is an f2. Most of them are 2.4, 2.5. I don't know if it makes sense, and I'm going to throw this to Josh to see, like, my nostalgia is maybe getting the better part of me, and I'm curious what Josh thinks on a practical level.
I mean, the best part of the S experience is the viewfinder. I don't care how good the optical view or the electronic viewfinders are on the modern EVF cameras. There's nothing better than looking through that massive, bright, beautiful, crisp optical viewfinder of an S camera. So if you enjoy that experience, you get a lot of camera for your money. You know, S007s are, I don't know, $5,000 I don't even know. They're inexpensive. The lenses, also inexpensive relative to their new price. Just make sure that you're buying them with new focus motors. I don't think it's as practical as using an SL3 because it just doesn't have as many features, doesn't have stabilization. But just purely from a camera on a tripod, f8, and be there, best case scenario, it's pretty enjoyable. And David has made a lot of really, really, really nice photos from the S cameras over the years. And I don't think that just because the system is a bit older, that makes those photos any worse. Yeah. I just think it takes a different mindset to using them. And yes, like you can still service them. Now, one thing I'll mention just to close out this question is, just because the S cameras and lenses have gotten less expensive over the years, doesn't mean the cost of servicing them has gotten less expensive. So if you're going to buy an S camera, like for example, any S camera that we sell pre-owned is going to have a full overhaul in Germany first, just to make sure that anything and everything that needs and could need to be fixed is addressed, because it can be quite expensive to have a camera service now relative to the cost. Because when the S007 was new, it was $20,000 or whatever. Even though now they may only be $5,000, a full service with some parts could be $2,000 or $3,000.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, so just keep that in mind.
I dropped a link to the article if you want to kind of check out the look of the lenses and the look of the camera. The other benefit is having a sensor that's larger than 35, medium format sensor, is that and I explained in the article, I'm not going to get into all of it, but basically a 45 is equivalent field of view of a 35, but it's still a 45 in terms of its look. So imagine shooting a wide 50, or, you know, the same goes for the wide lens. The 24 has the field of view of an 18 or 19 millimeter, but it has the distortion and look characteristics of a 24. Read the article, take a look, you know, picture walk, whatever you want to do. But it's interesting. And I saw some comments about people using S lenses on their SLs. I think that's great, but you're losing out on that. So now you just have a 24. You don't have a 24 that has a field of view of an 18. And maybe that's okay for you. But for me, I played around with that idea, and I ended up just migrating completely to SL lenses because it was really optimized for that system.
There we go.
Jose?
What else we got?
We're running up.
We got time for like at least 30 or 40 more questions. Yeah.
All right. I had the Q2, and every time it rains, the EVF viewfinder will get small dots of fogging. After a minute or two, it will clear itself. Is this common with the Q2, and is it a concern?
So you're saying when it gets wet, it gets wet? I mean, it's humidity. It's fogging. Yeah.
Inside or outside?
I think they're saying inside the camera. Yeah, I think if you have significant humidity and water evaporating all around the camera, that could happen. I'm trying to think of like last time I shot the Q2 in the rain. I don't like to get wet either, so you know, me and the cameras don't go out. But I would say if it's going away, I wouldn't worry about it. That's my answer to that. Okay. What else we got?
That's good. All right. 35 millimeter Summicron 8-element versus 7-element version 4.
That's super.
Well, what's the second part of that question, Jose?
It depends.
Yeah.
It's not an acceptable answer.
Now, just because you don't want me to say it depends doesn't mean I'm not going to say it, because it depends is all about lack of context. Because photography is so subjective and so individual. We say it depends because in order to give a recommendation that makes sense for the person asking the question, we need as much context and backstory as possible. So an 8-element 35 Summicron is a lens from the 1960s. Version 4 is a lens from the 1980s and 90s. They handle differently. One has an infinity lock, one does not. They render differently. One can be 6-bit coded, one can be not. Are you shooting them wide open? Are you shooting them up down? Are you shooting them on color? So this is the concept behind it depends. It's not just meant to be a casual joke, like, oh, it depends. It's because, like I said, photography is individual and we need context to make a recommendation that works for you. So I don't know how to answer that question for you because I could say the 35 Summicron version 4 is sharper, but if you say, well, I don't care about sharpness, I want the vintage look. Well, then I'll say, well, why didn't you tell me that when you asked the question? So I'm going
Context matters.
I'm going to
Context
summarize that by saying exactly that, David. Thank you. Context matters.
Yeah.
Moving on.
New shirt. Context matters.
That's right. Okay, we have time. One more question.
I'm looking at getting a 90mm to complete my 28-35-50 setup. What's your view on the Leica Summicron 90 f2 ELC on the new M11 sensor?
I actually really like, so what he's talking about is the 90 Summicron pre-Appo. ELC is Ernst Light's Canada, which they made in Canada. So there's, and we'll do an episode on this eventually, there's a series of lenses I call like the 80s babies that were made really, not just in the 80s, but they have...
Aren't you an 80s baby?
Yes, I am. They have the barrel design of a lens that looks more like a current lens, but the optics of an older lens. So 20mm version 4, 50 Summilux version 3. There's more. I'm just too tired to think about it. So look, the 90 pre-Appo Summicron is not as sharp or high performance as the 90 Appo Summicron, but it is super fun for portraits. I think specifically for that, using it close up. I would avoid using it for landscape or anytime where you're out of your infinity because it's really not going to perform well 5.6 or faster. But I love that lens for portraits, especially in silver chrome, which is very rare. In silver chrome, it's heavier than the 90 Appo limited edition silver chrome. It's like a dense piece of lead. It's crazy, crazy heavy, and I love that. It's not terribly practical, but yeah. Of course, you know what else we forgot to mention, David, thank you,
Yes.
is what happened 3 days ago for little old Josh over here, which is
What happened?
I celebrated my 15-year anniversary at Leica Star Miami,
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
which is crazy. Yeah, so March 12th, for anyone who's been with me
He
this whole
started when
time.
he was 10 years old.
I was 10.
Yeah.
March 12th, 2010 was my first day
Amazing.
working for this guy.
Amazing.
In fact, you interviewed me in this room.
Really?
Yes, this used to be our conference room before it turned into the studio.
Wow.
And
Wow.
you interviewed me right here, January 2010.
Woo.
And I flat out walked out. I stormed out and I said, absolutely not.
But we handcuffed you and you came back.
That's right. So there are some people watching who have probably been around since I started. I appreciate you.
Wow.
There are probably some new people, but yes, I started just after I turned 23. I just turned 38 2 weeks ago. Got a little gray in the beard now, but just a shout out to everybody who's stuck it out all those 15 years. And here's to 15 more, 150 more.
150 more years.
I mean, I'm just saying, I gotta keep eating my vegetables. All right, you want to sign us off?
All right, Jose, did we miss anything like crazy, anything?
There's a few questions here and there, but
Okay.
a
Leave
lot
them in
of
the
them have
comments.
been
Yeah,
answered.
listen, leave them in the comments. We do actually read most of those things. So hopefully you learned something new. You found something insightful. Maybe even we caused a new internet controversy. Who knows? It's possible.
We're very good at that.
We do that. Hopefully no lawsuits coming our way, but we are generally pretty good about that. The legal team keeps us in the...
We have a legal team?
No.
Oh.
The legal team is us not saying anything stupid.
I see. Wait, we are not doing a good job of that. Chonker.
Yeah, chonker. All right. So yeah, again, hopefully you enjoyed it and stuck with us for this. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. Click the notification bell so you know when we post new content. The best way, if you really want to support this channel, we love you when you subscribe. We love when you give us a thumbs up. But if you really want to support the channel and keep us doing what we're doing, consider making your Leica purchases at Leica Store Miami. That's what pays the bills, keeps the actual lights on in here and the internet and all that. So we dropped a couple links to the store, and we've always got some cool stuff. You can travel on workshops with me and the whole team. You can buy used stuff from this guy. And if you want to trade in gear, you can also go to that guy. Yeah, we're just a whole bunch of enthusiastic photographers just like you, except we get to do this for a living. So we're very fortunate
Pretty cool.
in that. We love it. And we're glad that we can be along for your journey. So big thank you to Josh as always. Thanks to Jose, because he stayed busy tonight. That's for sure. Usually he just sits over there and naps.
I know, right? We got a little pillow there. So we're
Have to
cozy.
work, actually.
But he was really working hard tonight. So big thanks. Shout out to Jose. And thanks to everyone who submitted questions, both before the show and live on air. Thanks for tuning in on your Saturday night. Hope you enjoy the rest of the weekend, and we will see you in April
12th.
for our next exciting episode. So stay tuned, watch your inbox, and again, subscribe to make sure you catch that episode. We'll see you next time, and take care.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Hi, guys.